Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at yegfitness. Today's podcast episode is with Isatu Fofanah, and she competed at a very high level in track, extremely smart, has a great story. We've got some connecting pieces regarding the town or city of Ponoka, and so that doesn't happen every day. And so if that is ringing a bell for you, you might want to keep listening or keep watching. Something about Ice is she has something about her in which I'm never going to be able to inspire people the same way she does. I didn't have to come from another country to save my own life, to survive. I just existed, lived a pretty tame life, had some jobs in retail, decided I didn't like certain jobs, decided I liked other jobs, did some school, didn't do some school. It's been a pretty tame existence. She's basically had to fight against all odds to be a top performer. And so you're bound to have something to learn from her. You're bound to get a new perspective. It's definitely worth a listen or watch. So thank you, and let's get started. All right, so welcome to the Lifestyle Chase. This is episode 127, and I am joined by the one and only Isatu Fofanah. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Well, we're in different situations, and I'm here today to listen to you. So it doesn't really, I'm fine. We don't need to worry about me. And so I can only imagine what it's like being in the world for you right now. And I'm excited to get to know more about you. And I'm excited to learn lessons from things that you've gone through. So I'm just curious, today, what did your day have in store for you? What did you do first thing? What was your routine?
I got up this morning, not gonna lie. As of this last week or so with everything happening in the news, just getting up has been tough. And I literally lay there for a good half hour. I was like, I don't want to get up today. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to hear about anything else because it's just been so overwhelming and just honestly, it's mentally draining as much as it is physically draining, just with what's happening in the US, just in general in terms of racism and people actually speaking out about it right now. And yeah, that was my day. But I had to get up because I had to work. I instruct classes at F45. I'm a head trainer and studio manager there as well. So my job every single day during COVID has just been providing a bit of light for people during COVID, offering online classes and just being there for people in a time that they really need some kind of interaction online. And that's my job every day. We offer one class a day, but it's just those 45 minutes that really do make a difference to my day and to their day. So it is a nice thing having that and just being able to have something to look forward to or to wake up to rather than just going to be another negative day full of a lot of news and a lot of stuff and a lot of content on social media. So that was my day. And then I did some stuff around the studio, came home, and yeah, and now I'm here with you.
Well, I mean, that's a very productive day and it's full of routine. And if there's ever been a common theme that I've heard from people, it's that routine is helpful. Having some kind of a routine with fitness or with what you do in the day, or just getting that uplifting atmosphere, being a positive energy. If we were to take a time machine and go back 15 years, where would that put you if we hop in the time machine and take a little travel?
15 years would be what? 4 years in Canada? I've been here for a while now. Yeah, so 15 years back would be my 4th year in Canada.
So what was life like then? Where were you? What were you doing? What things did you think were cool?
I honestly trying to learn the language. That's all I can really say. Learning the language and just adapting, I guess, to a new way of life and new routine and a new environment, new interactions and whatnot. So yeah, as a kid, so I immigrated from Sierra Leone, West Africa when I was 8. So I was born there. Most of my family's from there, and some of them still live back home. So, and I guess if you want to go a little bit further back than 15 years, we immigrated to Sierra Leone in 2001, and we ended up in a small town called Ponoka. But prior to that, the reason why we immigrated is because it was a civil war happening in Sierra Leone. If you guys don't know where that is, it's just the west coast of Africa, a little bit above like Nigeria and Ghana and all that stuff. But in the year around 1991 to 2002, there was a civil war that was taking place, and we were in the midst of all of this that was happening. So when it started off, I guess I wasn't really born yet, and then when I was born in 1993, so a couple of years into the war, I was born, and then throughout the war, like I grew up around there. But in 1999, it got really bad, and my aunt at the time, she immigrated to Canada, was living here for a while before that, married and all that stuff. So she was in the process of sponsoring all of us. So not my entire family, but she did a really good job of sponsoring all 13 members of my family. So close family members like my brother, and then my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and all that stuff, and my grandma. So she was in the process of like filling out the application form and just waiting for it to go through. So while that was happening, we're in the middle of a war and we're trying to get ourselves out of it. So from there, we immigrated to Guinea, West Africa, lived there for a year while we were waiting for things to happen and kind of things to settle in Sierra Leone. And then in 2001, we actually immigrated to Canada. I remember it was like the middle of summer and it was cold. It was like June or July, and we got off the plane. And prior to this is like an entire family who's never been in a different country. We were just told we were leaving. We didn't even know where we were going. We've never seen a map of anything else but where we were, where I was born. I didn't even know like the world was that big, right? So I was just, all I knew was Sierra Leone, West Africa. All I knew was the village that I grew up in, or the village that I was born, or like the tribes that my family is from. That's all I really knew. So it's like getting off the plane, not even knowing where you're going, traveling for 2 days, and all of a sudden you're like in a small town called Ponoka, and it's the middle of summer, July, and you're freezing. So it was a huge cultural shock for sure, and it was just a whole new world, new experience, new learning, and it was just really fast paced. You're just a kid, you don't even know what you're doing, but you have to learn this language, you have to like wear these clothes that you've never worn before, and you have to like layer up and all that stuff, and you have to adapt to new climates and weathers and whatnots. And so it was a lot. It was a lot. So yeah, I immigrated to Ponoka, lived there, went to school there, and pretty much grew up there for most of my high school days. And during that time, went to school, became involved in sports, and I just fell in love with sports right away. That was just like my outlet of everything that was happening in my life and everything that I was going through at home too. So I just fell in love with sports, and just made sure I was super enrolled and super involved in academics and athletics. And then from there, I was able to finish off high school, but then I finished off my high school year in Edmonton. So I actually moved to Edmonton instead of Ponoka in 2000, and I want to say 2010, 11, that summer. And then graduated high school, got some scholarship offers to schools in the States, and went to university. And then from there, now in the real world, came back home, ran track, ran professionally for Team Canada. And then now I'm just kind of a retired athlete, just living life and kind of trying to be an adult.
Yeah.
And face the world.
Well, I mean, it's cool that the time machine question worked so well. Like, I barely even had to try with that. You just like took it and ran with it. Like, I got the year off. Like, I was just like, the cool thing is I can like sit here and be like, what was life like 10 years ago? And then they have a story, and it doesn't matter who it is, there's a story. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I like is because we have like this unique connection that we realized like a few days ago. And it revolves around Ponoka. And so, fun fact, I was born in Ponoka and I grew up nearby. Nearby. I wouldn't say I spent a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time there, but that was just the hospital that my parents went to. And so
Mm-hmm.
we came to the realization that there was maybe a few instances where my aunt and uncle gave you a ride, and it was just like, when I realized that, I was like, that is so cool, because probably 10 or 15 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, I don't even know anymore, because time just flies. It just seems one second we're like 10 years old, next second we're like 28 or whatever. It's just like, it's nuts. But the fact that I knew of you and I heard about like this really fast track star, it was just, that's what I heard from my aunt and uncle. They were like, yeah, and every so often we help out this girl and she's really fast. Like, we think she's gonna go to the Olympics. Like, we think she's gonna make it all the way. And I was like, oh, that must be really fast, because like I can't even win at the 200 meter at my own school's thing. And I was like, I wonder how fast she is. And I just always, for years, I was like, I wonder how fast she was. And then this one day at Evolve, I'm just chilling. And then you were doing like some warm ups and stuff. And I was like, okay, like, she looks fast. And what are the odds that this is the same person that my aunt and uncle were talking about? I was like, come on, Chris, like, that's naive. Like, how could it be the same person? So I just let it go. And then as time went on, I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that's the same person. And so that little realization made me realize like how small the world really is.
Mm-hmm. It is. I actually thought about it too, because like after we met at Evolve and I started following you on Instagram and I was like, little, that name's not like super common. So what are the chances of you guys being related? Like what are the chances of me knowing Nell and Ken Little and you guys being related? And then when you did reach out and ask me a couple of days ago, I was like, oh my goodness, I should have asked. I thought about it, but I was like, oh, what are the chances? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's, the
but it's
odds
pretty cool.
are really high in Alberta. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but it's pretty high that just about everybody with the last name is related. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but I haven't stumbled across them. But yeah, so that was a
Mm-hmm.
super cool connecting piece. But I found that you actually have a Wikipedia page. Not many people have one of those, so like, I mean, pat on the back for you, because like I've never, like, that's
Thanks.
such, so cool. And so in doing that, I discovered like, not only have you broken your own personal records, I mean, you've gotten like the scholarships as you've spoken about. What was it like to be in that process of like getting selected for track scholarships? Like, I don't know anybody else with a track scholarship, so I just want to know what that's like to have happen in a new
Mm-hmm.
country that you're just kind of getting your bearings, and all of a sudden you're getting recruited for like high profile academic athletic endeavors.
Mm-hmm. So to be honest, the whole receiving scholarship thing, I wouldn't have known anything about it if I didn't have a friend who was going through the process. She was a year younger than me, so she graduated a year younger before I did, and she was applying to universities in the States. And unless you actually know, you think that, oh yeah, like I'm good, my times are good, my stats are good or whatever, therefore people should notice me. And I think that's the ignorance that a lot of athletes have. They think they're so good that everyone should notice them. But in reality, when it comes to like especially getting recruited in universities in the States or the NCAA in general, you have to put yourself out there. So she actually had the SAT book and I borrowed it from her. I started studying. And at the time, like I was in AP programs too. So I was like, okay, all this stuff was like pretty easy for me to, get through and study for. So I spent like 4 months studying for it when I wrote my SAT. And during that time too, I set up a recruiting website. So it's called Be Recruited. I think it's still around. At the time, it was like $100 a year. You could set up your profile. You could have your videos of your events, whatever events you ran. If it was hurdles, you could have hurdle videos, long jump videos, and just have your times. If it was long jump, have your distances there. And coaches could go and take a look at your profile. So with that being said, like I set up my profile and I had about 32 university offers just from there, with just having my stats on there. I wrote my SAT, got in, scored pretty high, where I was able to get into all the Division One NCAA schools, and And then from there, I made a list of my top 5 schools. And then after that, I was like, okay, that was a little too much. I made a list of my top 3 schools that I wanted to go to. So with that being said, and with the offers that I received, I got all the top 3 schools and I just went for visits. So you have potentially you're allowed 5 at the time. I don't know what the rules are anymore, but at the time it was 5 of your top schools you are allowed to go and visit for free. Everything is paid for. If you're interested, they're interested in you. They fly you there, they host you, they give you per diem while you're there for 2 or 3 days or the weekend usually. And they kind of just show you around campus, what campus life is like, depending on what kind of courses you want to take or what kind of degree or program you want to take. They will have someone who has a similar background to kind of show you around the campus and kind of try to persuade you. And then they treat you really nice. They take you out for dinner, they take you out for games, they take you out usually to like the head coach's house and you get to meet their family and whatnot. So it was a really cool experience, but that was how I literally got myself out there. You have to reach out to people who've been through it, because if you don't, it's not as easy as some people may think it is, because I would have never known. I just heard that, oh yeah, you can receive scholarship offers if you're really good, if you run a certain time, or if you're a really good athlete in general, and you're really good in your country or whatever. But it's not as easy as most people will think.
Well, I mean, in getting to that process, like, it sounds like you were extremely disciplined to be able to get into like advanced academic studies and stuff. Like, how do you maintain such focus over a long period of time? Like, what is it that you have to do in order to keep your eye on the prize?
Oh man, I'm always trying to figure that out, to be honest. But I feel like as a immigrant who immigrated from a situation that was way worse, and then you're being put into a place where opportunities are plentiful, and your job, and I feel like your responsibility is to do better than where you came from. So I feel like as a kid, I established that from earlier on, and I was able to have a really good work ethic because of that, because I always knew like I didn't leave Sierra Leone, a country that was being torn apart because of the civil war, to come here to do worse. So in the back of my mind, that's always been the goal, is to just do better than what I would have done if I was still back home. Like my chances of survival would probably be very slim. So every time I think of like slacking or, taking it easy or getting unmotivated, that's always has been in the back of my mind. Like, I have to do better. I'm an immigrant. Like, a lot of people died for this, and I'm put in this position where I can be more, I can do more, and I can literally change my life and then the lives of so many other individuals around me. So, and that has always been my motivation. Yes.
Well, I mean, that is eye-opening. It's something that's been on my mind as I've interviewed more and more people. I've been like, like, the people that I interview teach me so much through perspective. Like, I could interview a person that's had the exact same life experience as me, and they might be like 10 years ahead in our own little like kind of same journey. But what kind of new things will I learn? What kind of adversity will I learn? What kind of like facing the obstacles will I learn? So that's what I love about this interview, because it kind of teaches me, like gives me a flash of perspective. Like, hey, I mean, if I don't have like, I don't know, a new patio chair, everything's going to work out okay. Like, I'm alive, I have food,
Yeah.
I have opportunity, and I just need to work my ass off. And especially like from in the position that I'm in, and I am learning to listen more and more, and I'm learning to be more of an empath, and I'm learning to try and put myself in other people's situation. Like throughout this week, just learning to be someone that can listen to people when they need somebody to listen. Talk less, which is a struggle for me. I talk so much, it runs in my family. But I dial that back to be a better person for the people around me. In your journey, like, so you got into the school. What was it like to, like, you went from Ponoka to Edmonton, and then you got to your scholarship at university. Is that kind of how the process went?
Yeah, so it was Ponoka, then I like moved my grade 12 year to Edmonton, finished off here, went to Ainley, don't know why, I should have gone to Skona. And from there I finally decided I was going to Northern Arizona in Flagstaff, Arizona. So it's a little bit more in the mountains. So we're training at 7,000 feet elevation. And I guess the deciding factor on that was just it's close to home, and it really resembled a lot of like Alberta, the mountains and whatnot. Still has snow, even though I hate snow and the cold, but it was very minimal where it's like you could wear a light jacket in the winter time and I wouldn't have to wear my 5 layers of the parka and 3 layers of socks or whatever. But I really liked it. It was just the vibe and the environment was really great. So yeah, from Ponoka to Edmonton to northern Arizona, and it was just more of like learning how to adapt because again, life isn't always about just going into a straight line or you have a goal and it's just going to be a smooth sail. There's curves and turns, and I guess just from immigrating to Canada and having to be forced to adapt and find a new way of living and expressing yourself and also new freedoms and opportunities that are presented with it. It's just being very open-minded about things. At any course in life, things change. Like right now, what we're going through COVID, no one expected our 2020 would end up like this, right? But this is the situation, this is what's happening. And some people will take advantage of that. They will adapt, they'll find new opportunities and new ways to keep going on and keep persevering, whereas others will just use it as a defeating factor and toss in their 2020 year and just think this is like the worst year ever. But there's a lot of moving parts right now. COVID, what's happening with America, and I think it's just a time for change, and it's time for people to just be open-minded about what's happening.
Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, it's a major awakening for people, whether it be our environmental impact, our social impact, just a time to start learning things that we know nothing about, understanding that we'll probably mess it up, but if we get back up real quick, we're going to be okay. Like, have you ever run a race where something just didn't go the way that you wanted it to go?
Oh yeah, that's like all the time. Yeah. Every single time. I mean, we always don't have this idea of how we're going to execute a race, but again, it's not usually how you started. My coach always says. So with sprinting per se too, there's like 3 important phases. So there's the start phase, acceleration phase. There's actually 4 phases. Start phase, acceleration. There's the transition phase, phase 2. Phase 3 is going to be your top end speed, and then the finish, right? So my coach always reminds me, no matter how you start in life, it's the transition that is the most important, right? It's how you choose to keep going after a terrible stumble or whatever, or if you start off really slow, your reaction time is really bad. You're not just going to toss everything out the window and stand up right away and call your race. You just throw your race in the bag and that's it. If you have a stumble at your starting block, that transition can still make up for a lot, and that can still make a really good race. You just have to execute properly and not just give up right away. And and just kind of trust the process, right?
Well, I mean, that's a amazing analogy for life. Like, people can take that and apply it to all kinds of different things where they think like it's like the year 2020. It's like no sense in thinking the whole year is shot when there's so many opportunities to pivot or opportunities to kind of lean into that discomfort of like thinking, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to try my best, or I'm going to wear my heart on my sleeve and like be the best version of me that I can be. Like, you got to be all in on this year that we have in front of us. In your running career, have you ever had like injuries or anything like that? I hear so much about competitive sprinters where they're using the same muscles and then they're so much more susceptible to injury. What's your experience with that like?
Oh man, that's the reason why I'm done with track. So yeah, I've had multiple injuries right off the start. I mean, it started off in college, to be honest. It's just the NCAA is a great opportunity, but it's a very exhausting experience. Like, we're competing, we're training every day, our season. So with track, there's 2 seasons. So it's not like football where you go for 6 months and then you get the rest of the year off or whatever, right? I don't even know how football works, but it's not like that. It's 2 seasons, technically back to back. Indoor season will start anywhere from training for it. We'll usually start like in August, September in the fall, and then you start competing indoors in December, and it goes on until usually April, May, depending on where you're at, usually in Canada. it'll go until April, and then in the US it might go on a little bit later. And from there, you get usually like 2-3 weeks off if you're lucky. And then you have an outdoor season right after that, right? So you start competing outdoor right away. It's not like you're training again for outdoor. You just kind of carry over whatever speed development you've built indoors. You carry it over to your outdoor season. And that usually starts in May, sometimes June, depending on where you're at. And that goes on till maybe August, September, October. It all depends where you're at. So being an NCAA athlete, like I would compete indoors, I'd compete outdoors. And then once my outdoor season is done, I come back home. But my season is actually not done because the Canadian season goes on really late. And just the track season in general, if you're professional, you're trying to compete for your country, it goes on pretty late. So like Worlds is usually like in August, September. So by then I'm done competing outdoors. And then I have to go back to school and start my indoor season again. So it's physically exhausting. It's a lot of training. It's a lot, like our training would be in here from like 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours, depending on how hard it is and how the weather permits. And we'll have like 3 hard days where it's either every other day, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then those hard days are more speed days. And we would have acceleration work, we spike up, we'll have longer recovery time. But then once we're done our speed session, which is anywhere from an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours on the track, then we have a weight session, which is going to be another hour, hour and a half in the weight room. So it's a really long day in general. And on top of that, you're like academics, you have school, you have maybe like you're taking a full course load while you're training full time at the same time. And just physically, mentally exhausting. Just over time, you're competing every weekend in the NCAA, and then you come home, you're competing every weekend. So it's just a long, almost 10 to 12 months of just competing and just beating your body down. So I have had injuries. My freshman year, I had knee issues that was never really fixed. I just took some time off when I needed to. And then it just kind of like progressively worked its way up the chain, the kinetic chain. And then it became like my hip issues. And that's actually why I'm no longer running track. I would love to still be in the sport. But again, things happen when it's time, and it's just my time was up. So my career was due to a hip labrum, my right hip labrum. I tore the cartilage and I had surgery and everything, but it was just not, it wasn't the same. Like everyone has a different way of bouncing back. Some people bounce back well, some people don't bounce back at all, or just some people are just, they just had enough. And I think for me personally, I've just had years of just beating my body down. The hip issue started way back in 2014 when I was still in the States running and competing and whatnot. And I had MRIs, multiple MRIs. They weren't able to see anything in the imaging. And as a result of that, I just kept on training because as an athlete, I guess another thing that a lot of us develop over time is to kind of like just train through the pain. Even though you know there's something wrong, your coaches tell you train through the pain. So therefore you listen and you just kind of think it's a way of being mentally tough when it's probably stupidity. And now I'm more of an advocate of like listening to your body and whatnot. But I just kept on training through it. And it just became worse and worse where it wasn't even my right hip at the time that I was feeling. Like I felt like a pinching sensation. And but what was happening was I was actually straining my left hamstring every single time I would like train or go for competition or anything. I would strain my left hamstring right away. So I moved to Toronto in 2017 and got an MRI done on my right hip because my coach at the time was like, you know what, this makes no sense. Like there's range, there's strength. So what is going on? So he just decided to get an imaging on the other hip and we'll go from there. And they found out it was like a huge labrum tear that has been there for years. And I needed to either get surgery or quit right then and there. So it was a really hard decision because I was like, if I get surgery, there's always that what if component of I'm going to regret it. I'm going to live a life of regret saying, hey, what would have happened if I had gotten surgery and not just quit? So I just decided, you know what, the worst thing that can happen is I get surgery, it doesn't work, and then we know, right? So I decided to go ahead with the surgery in 2018. So it was like a huge process. This is like a huge wait list, right? Even though you're like your Team Canada athlete or whatever, we don't get a lot of like expedited, privileges. We have to wait like most people. We don't have to wait as long for sure, but there was still a process where I was like waiting. And then finally 2018, that year, February, I got my surgery, and it was a really good surgeon. He's done a lot of our teammates. So labrum tears are super common in the sprint world, in the track world in general. If you're a sprinter, if you're a long distance runner, and I had no idea of it until I actually went through it. And then when I went through it, I had people that were coming forward, talking about it, sharing their stories, helping me recover a lot faster, and just giving me tools on how to be successful post surgery, which was really helpful. But unless you go through something, you're never going to know what it's like if you, like, again, you haven't gone through it, or if you don't reach out or ask for questions or ask for answers and whatnot. So that was the surgery. It went well. 2 days after my surgery, I was on a bike because, athletes were crazy. Was biking. I was doing my rehab stuff, and it felt great. And I got cleared in July. So maybe 6 months after, got cleared in July to return to training, but not competition, just to slowly transition to training. But just every time I trained, my body just was not the same. There was just a lot of imbalances over time, and just a lot of compensating that my body had to do because of that injury. And I just mentally, physically, I was just super exhausted. And again, in the back of my mind, I was just like, I didn't come here to struggle to be an athlete. First off, it's not like Team Canada is paying us athletes any money. Some of us are actually not getting paid, right? And since I was injured 2 years before, I wasn't eligible for any kind of funding. So all the training that I was doing in Toronto during surgery, after surgery, all that stuff, I have to pay for everything, right? I had to pay for my way. It wasn't like they would pay for my living, they'd pay for me to train, they'd pay for my food accommodations or anything like that. Athletes are working full-time jobs, or they're working part-time jobs while they're trying to train full-time as well and represent their country. So it was just a time in my life I was like, this is not the life that I came here to create. I didn't leave a place where I was struggling to come here to even struggle more to try to represent my country. I love Canada and all that, but it was just that deciding factor, I have to do more for my life. I have to start creating a career and just an impact that I can leave behind, or just to find ways to influence people otherwise and just through track. So I decided to quit track, and yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that you shared that with me, because I know some competitive track runners, and injuries are extremely common, and it can be a big mental battle. When your eyes are on the prize of progressing in one specific modality, whether we're lifting, whether we're running, whether we're competing at a high level, or we're competing with ourselves in the mirror, it can be really tough to have to pivot. What kind of went through your head in the moments that you were like, okay, we have to shut her down, we're going to pivot? Because you have a good attitude, but I can imagine that there must have been some tough moments there.
Oh yes, there was a lot of days where I would have conversations with my coach where I was like, coach, what am I doing? I want to come back, but I don't want to come back as just a mediocre athlete who's just trying to run times or whatever, or trying to come back, but they're not really fully recovered. And now looking back, I think my biggest issue was I was mentally in a state of mind where I was trying to prepare myself to compete, which a lot of athletes do, rather than preparing yourself just to be healthy, right? And if I had that different shift before I decided to shut it down, I think I would have been way better off. But again, it would have been years, who knows, maybe I would have had the same mentality and would have still kept on going. But at the end of the day, I think I wouldn't have enjoyed the journey as much, because I would be forcing a lot of things, right? And even though I'm sad and I miss the sport, I miss the individuals in the sports, I miss the traveling, the experience, the cultures, and all that stuff, I feel like it was the right time for me. It was a tough decision. Even today, I'll wake up one day and I'm like, I'm no longer retired. I'm going to go back. And I'm like, no, Ice, no, you're done. There's no going back here. There's days where I do wake up and I'm like, oh, I feel great. My body feels great. But I do one hard workout and my hip just gets so agitated. It's just, Like, yeah, anytime I feel my hip, I'm like, yeah, no, it's done.
Well, I
So,
mean, you talked about like feeling a sense of purpose or like creating like one of the biggest things that can be really fulfilling for people is sort of creating momentum, creating like a legacy of our own. Like we all want to have like
mhm.
this is what I left on this earth. Like this is the thing that I started and people will remember me for it. What
Yeah.
inspired you to get into the fitness industry? Like I know you were very active in fitness, but was there like a certain moment that made you think, "Oh, I'm going to be a trainer and I'm going to just train everybody that I can train," kind of thing?
Um, no, I've just always loved being active, and I just always loved the idea of like pushing yourself physically, mentally, and not really you're never good. Like you're good right now, but it's not your best, right? There's always potential, there's always opportunity for growth and development. And I just love that idea. And fitness is one way that you can really express that. And just being, I guess, being an athlete, being in the sports world. And then I also studied exercise science in university. I was like, I might as well put that to good use. So, yeah. So the fitness space was just something that was really it just resonated with me really well. And it was just an opportunity for me to be very creative and also express myself too. And I know like I've known a lot of individuals who just kind of struggle with body image issues. And it's just a really great way to reach out and just show women, especially in fitness, that there is potential, that lifting weights and being strong is not a bad thing. It is actually empowering, and it's what the body was designed to do. And I've always just loved the idea of just fitness in general. There's just so many opportunities in it. You can change
Well,
people's lives. You can share stories. Yeah.
I agree completely. Like, I mean, you came to the right podcast to be talking about how great fitness is. But with your
Mm-hmm.
education with exercise science, was there other stuff that you studied in addition, or was it just streamlined right into just the fitness space with your university
I
education?
on Yes, I always knew like I was really good at science, so I wanted to do science, something sciencey related, and then I was always a huge fan of sports, athletics. I was like, okay, you know what? Exercise science it is. So that was it, just from day one. I just always knew. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that works out really well. There's so many ways to enter into this industry, and for it to line up like that, for you to have to pivot, but have everything that you kind of need in that process, or at least be headed in the right
Mm-hmm.
direction. Because, like, I came into this industry from something like totally different. And so I was like, I'm in fitness now? Like, it was a big shock for me. But when you were so into competing and you were performing at a high level, and you're learning all this stuff from like highly sought after coaches. And I say that as a blanket statement. I'm assuming if somebody is a coach at an institution where you have to compete to get in, or where you have to compete to get like a scholarship, like they gotta be like
Mm-hmm.
amongst the top people out there. When it came to
Mm-hmm.
your coaches in the university level or college level, like what was the best advice that they gave you that you can kind of think of today, if anything like has stood out?
There's life after track. I remember that very vividly because I was so obsessed with track. I was just literally, I can go to any parties. I would do everything that I was told, eat this, eat that. And it becomes very, like anything, it becomes very obsessive, right? Where you just think about it, you can't take your mind off of it. So I was just consumed by track 24/7, trying to be the best 24/7 and missing out on experiences and missing out on like relationships and whatnot. Like if I want to do something, I will go the extra mile. I will become super obsessed with it. I'll just immerse myself. And that was my mentality in college, where I missed out on a lot of experiences because of that. And I think a lot of NCAA athletes do that too. We miss out on all those great relationships and mentorships that we could be building, but we're just so obsessed with just our scores. And then on top of that, trying to maintain your GPA, but you're not really immersing yourself in the now and in the moment, right? In the experience itself. So I didn't really spend the time to get to really experience and enjoy my journey. I was just kind of like A to B, eye on the prize, nothing else matters kind of thing. So yeah, my coach just told me, Ice, there's like life after track. Like when you're done, what do you want to do with your life? You can't run track forever. You can't do any kind of athletic adventure forever. You can work out and maintain a healthy lifestyle, but you can't go all out 100% every single day and expect to maintain that for the rest of your life. It's about sustainable habits over time. And it's just about what are you going to do after you're done track? What is something that really moves you besides track? So it's like, oh, the fitness world. So yeah, that was the best advice I'd ever gotten. Just started to shift my perspective and think about how I can actually impact people, because when we're athletes or when we're competing, we're very selfish individuals. It is the honest truth. And it took me stepping away from it to really realize that like we have a lot of people who support us. We have entire communities to support us. Like I grew up in Ponoka, and I know I left and went to university elsewhere, but like I've always been a Ponoka girl, and the entire town has always stood behind me. And when I was in the sport, like I realized it, but I didn't really value it as much, if you understand what I mean. So now that I'm no longer in the sport, and now that I'm thinking about life after, well, I am done track, life now, life after track, literally, it's like all those people who played a role in allowing you to experience those moments and allowing you to experience those opportunities, like those are what truly matters, honestly. Like I didn't get here on my own. Like, yes, there's so many talented individuals out there, but they're not going to be able to get to where they need to if they don't have the support behind them. So that was one thing that I wish I kind of spent a little bit more time appreciating and being more present with. But yeah.
Well, I mean, that's super cool because yeah, like I even saw you in newspaper articles. Like, isn't that bizarre? Like, when does that happen? When do I interview somebody like a decade later and I'm like, oh, like I legitimately saw her in a newspaper article, and that just makes me giggle. Like I'm just like, of course I saw the article, but then it does take a village to basically elevate anybody in any place in our life, in any ventures that we do, like brand new businesses, they need their first like 20 clients. Trainers, they need their clients. People who cut hair, well, they need people's hair to cut. And so like community is great. There was the thing that I saw on your Instagram story just with like the F45 community, and it was so heartwarming to see that in just like that gesture that they did for you. And like what was your emotions in that moment?
I still think about it even today, and I was not expecting that. Like my bosses and the owners of the F45 Walker Lakes that I'm at, they're amazing individuals. Like the entire family, their families, I spent time with them outside of F45. But for them to actually, and the members like Chad Cook put that, he organized the entire thing where he got everyone to change their screen. There was a picture of myself, and then it said, "We support you," or we stand with you, Isatu, and hashtag Black Lives Matter. And I wasn't expecting that at all. Like I literally turned on my computer. I had a Zoom live workout at 11:30 that day. Turned on my computer at 11:15, and everybody was logged in. And individuals that were not even doing the workout were logged in just to support me and support any people of color everywhere, all over the world. And it was a huge moment where I cried. I cried, and it was a huge moment where I was like, this is what the world needs. Like, it's one thing to say you're not racist or to say that you do value and believe that everybody deserves equality and you see different races as one. But it's one thing to actually stand out or stand up and speak out on an issue like what is happening today, because we can't just turn a blind eye on it. It's there. If you think it's not there, you're either in denial or you're just not having these conversations. Like there's lots of experiences, like there's a lot of stories out there. If you ask your friends who are of color, ask them to share their stories with you. Like this is real. Like I got pulled over a few times in my life, and it was for no reason. It was just like registration, insurance, is this your car? And that was all they asked. And when I asked why, they never really elaborated. It was just whatever they wanted to pull me over. they're going to pull me over when they want to pull me over. But what the community at F45 Walker Lakes did yesterday was amazing, and I'm really, really appreciative of it. And that is what we need. Like, if you believe in something, stand up for it, no matter what you think the world is going to think of you. If you truly believe in something, it should not feel like you're being pressured to stand up. It should just be something that you want to do. Like, if you want to lose 100 pounds and you're just sick and tired of it, you're going to lose that 100 pounds, right? But if you don't want to do it, of course you're going to come up with all the excuses in the world. And this is the message I'm trying to get across on my social media. It's not really about black versus white. It's about, if you know that there's a wrong or injustice happening in the world, and you truly do not like it, and you truly want to stand up for it, then do so. Use your platform like you're doing. Get people out who are educated on the issue to share their stories, or to share resources on how you can help, or spread the awareness. Because like, those cops that did what they did to George Floyd would not have been apprehended if it wasn't the voices of thousands of people all over the world speaking out, not just staying silent and saying, hey, people of color can deal with this because they're more educated in that field. You're never going to get educated in this field if you don't have those conversations, if you don't speak out, if you don't ask for resources, right? Can you imagine if everyone who actually helped apprehend those cops, if we didn't do anything because we're like, oh, well, my voice doesn't matter, someone else is going to do this, they're going to take care of it. Can you imagine if we were thinking the same thing? Nothing would have been done by now, right?
Yep.
So that is the power of many voices united.
Well, I mean, like, self-belief in and of itself, any time of the year, to believe in yourself and what you can be capable of, like, your entire journey has been you believing in yourself and having that pay off. And despite how realistic believing in yourself has been, you've prevailed and you've pushed forth. And that, I think, in and of itself is pretty cool. Like, to think, like, what if I grew up the way you grew up? Would I be able to face the obstacles in the same way? And I can't say with confidence that I can. Like, I don't know if I would be able to. I would have no idea what would happen. I would be in such fear, such like doubt. I would think, am I even going to survive? Like, that is the experience that I go through when I try and think of, had my childhood been anything different than what it was. And so whether my like emotional like antenna is just cranked to the max and I just empathize with every cat, dog, human being in the planet, or whether it's just I've learned a few things from talking to a whole bunch of people. There's so much value into being able to understand, or at least try to understand, like, what is the experience like for my client, or what is the experience like for my friend down the street, or what is the experience like for the person that I'm talking to right now? Like, I know my experience is like, and I don't really know what your experience is like, but through our conversation, I've learned so much. I've been able to really understand, like, it took a lot of self-belief. It took a lot of like sacrifice. Like, I grew up in a similar way in the sense that I didn't really party. I mean, before I turned 18, it was a very just play on the computer, go to school, play on the computer, go to school, go outside for a bit, play on the computer, go to school. Like, super, no crazy parties, no getting in trouble, with the odd exception, but for the most part, not getting in trouble. But yeah. And so your story inspires me that no matter what excuse that I have, that I'm going to be okay. But then it got me thinking,
Mm-hmm.
what are your goals for the future? Like, do you have like a 5-year plan? What are your big, hairy, ambitious goals?
Oh man, I do have a 5-year plan. So I definitely want to go back to school, and I want to be a physiotherapist one day for sure. It's just always been like, especially going through injuries, being an athlete, and there are some really good physiotherapists out there. And then there's so many terrible ones too, right? Like any occupation, right? So I've just been really passionate about like just the whole rehab, injury preventative, long-term health, and just longevity when it comes to health and fitness in general. So I really want to be in that space where I can impact and help potential athlete down the road who went through maybe a labrum tear or any kind of injury, just rehab and come back even healthier and stronger. So that is my goal, is master's in physiotherapy. And then from there, I want to create a platform like where individuals, whether you're Black, you're white, you're Asian, you're Indian, whatever, just coming together, sharing your stories and just creating that dialogue where we can share and ask questions openly, and we can learn and educate ourselves on each other. And that's the only way that the world is going to become a better place. So those are my 2 goals.
Well, that's awesome. I'm curious, what's your first step to getting into physiotherapy? What's the first thing on the list that you have to do to get that rolling?
Well, I have to go back and take some classes. So it's a very competitive field. Yeah, the GPA to get in is like 3.8 GPA to get in. So I'd have to just take a couple courses, redo them, bump up my GPA, and then apply. And although I also wanted to take a few online classes as well, just in general. So this will be a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and then you apply to a few. I'm looking at U of T in Toronto, and then there's also Australia, which probably won't happen anytime soon with the borders and everything. But I really want to be somewhere warmer in general. I'm not a huge fan of winter. Too cold.
Well, I mean, they have everything that's on the ground that wants to try to kill you in Australia. So, I mean, there's the pros and cons no matter where you go.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But
I'm not too terrified though. Like, I'll take my chances. Big spiders versus cold any day.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a big chicken, so that's why I don't mind being cold. I'll put on the parka and I'll just stay here where everything can't really survives the minus 35 weather or whatever it gets to be around here. So then my last question for you, second last question for you is, if you could give one piece of advice to someone on how to live their life to the fullest by being themselves, what would that piece of advice be?
Wow. Be open. Don't be worried about what other people are going to think, because the truth of the matter is people are always going to judge you. Whether you stand up for something or you don't stand up for something or you remain silent, they're always going to judge you no matter what. So you might as well just be open, unapologetic, and just keep it real.
And then,
right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's good advice that can apply to so many things, like open communication when we're learning from our trainers and our clients. It teaches us to get to know people better, and just being okay with just being who we are and just being ourselves and pushing forward. So every episode, I leave the listeners/viewers with a challenge for the episode. And I'm going to challenge you to come up with the challenge. So you got to come up with the challenge. So what you're going to do is you're going to be like, your challenge for today's episode is, and then you just say it.
Okay. What, on my count?
Yep. Well,
or whenever I'm ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay. Your challenge for today's episode is take the time to have that uncomfortable conversation. Ask someone of color what they're going through and just listen. Just be empathetic, get educated, and just have an open mind and an open heart. That's your challenge for today's episode.
That's a wonderful challenge. So thank you so much for joining me today and for outdoing me on the backdrop. So if anybody's listening to this, they got to check out the video to see the backdrop, because she just rocked it today.